Did you ever have any issues with jealous non-Wiccan partners? So I know this question is obviously coming from someone who's in a relationship with someone that's not Wiccan. So, all right, I'll let you lead.
Yeah. So my current relationship, I'm very blessed. He is very, very supportive. And although he is not Wiccan himself or a witch or any of that, he's definitely very spiritual. And I feel comfortable when he comes into public spaces with me, ritual spaces and that, because he really supports it. And he really also jumps into it because he sees it as an opportunity to learn and to grow. So I'm blessed in that sense. My ex-fiance as well, we met at a pagan festival, and it was super supportive and an amazing person. And I will never speak lowly of them because they were super cool and always there for me. And especially when it came to that. And, you know, when I lived in Montreal and I was traveling back sometimes 2-3 times in a month for coven meets or to get together, and was always super cool with that and always supportive. My first partner before, like my main partner, long-term relationship before that though, when we first met, actually, while he was really supportive and really there in the sense of like, okay, you're going to go do your thing or whatever. There were times where, for example, I remember doing a house busing and going around and a cleansing and warding. And as I was going around, you know, I could hear him outside being like, oh, Liam's doing blah, blah, blah. And, that, you know, and kind of, so that was kind of, that was interesting. I was lucky in the sense of, I had that support within the coven that even in those moments, I was like, no, I know what I'm doing and I can do this. And even if I don't know what I'm doing, I can ask. And so I had that. If I was somebody in a dynamic where they were a witch or interested in witchcraft or whatever pagan path, and their partner necessarily wasn't for that either at all or in partial ways, whatever, I can understand how that would be really hard and can be very difficult, especially when love comes into play, because when we love somebody, we want to try to, you know, be supportive and be kind and not do things that make them uncomfortable or make them uncertain, etc. So I can understand that. I think that ultimately it comes down to if the path that you're seeking is one that really speaks to you and you're called to, regardless of anybody else, ultimately it's important, if it really speaks to you on that deeper level, that you follow that, because there's something to that. And that's kind of where I won't go too much in that, but there's something to that, and you need to honor that truth and you need to follow that truth because it's going to lead you somewhere. And I feel that if you have people in your life, whether a partner or friendships or family, who are not supportive and don't, you know, first of all, I'm going to say that probably comes from fear. It comes from a not knowing. It comes from a not understanding. So if you feel like you can, maybe try to speak with them and to educate them and to give them information, whatever information you can. Obviously, if you're an oath-bound thing, don't divulge that. But you know, just kind of give them information and kind of educate them. And through that, hopefully it'll bring reassurance and that. But ultimately, it comes right down to what's your truth. And if somebody is going against that truth, again, whether family, partner, because if they're your partner, why are they going against your truth, in my opinion? But whatever, then you will definitely, didn't want to say it, but you will definitely come to a point where you have to make a choice, probably, of, do I stick with this path, even if it means losing others, or do I stick with this person and potentially forsake my truth? And so that'll be your choice, and you have to make that choice. What I will tell you, and this is something that my first high priestess told me, is that when you do follow your truth, when you do follow your path, things that are no longer in line with that path are going to start to fall away of their own accord. And you have a choice there too. You can choose to try to grip and to hang on and to force it. But you're only going to cause yourself a lot of pain and suffering, I have found in my experience, and I have learned. And so it is truly better to come to peace with the fact that maybe this person you've taught them all you can teach them, and they've taught you all that they can teach you. And maybe it's better to just let that drift away and let them go on their path, and to find somebody who's in line with their beliefs and their traditions, and or non-beliefs, if that's the case. And maybe that's better in the end. And for you, you will eventually, whether find somebody else, or whether you're not intended to find somebody else, and you will find yourself, and so ultimately I think it's a matter of that. There's great wisdom to that. That's one of the first lessons I learned, I think, that you taught me. And it's one thing that I've really held on to, Maggie, is that if it's no longer in line, it's going to fall away. That's just how it works. And you kind of gotta, it's really tough, but the less you make effort to hold on to and force, the better it will be all around. And the more peace you will find in the end, even if it hurts, and it will hurt initially. I think that you will eventually find more peace that way. So that's my response. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I am very much, in alignment with what you have said, of course.
Yeah.
And yes, I have experienced, jealous non-Wiccan partners. My husband is not witchy in any way, shape, or form, not spiritual in any way. And, he always has been, how do we put it? He's always had a hard time with it. Me working with groups and stuff. And, like at one point we were in marriage counseling, and he said to the therapist, well, she's doing God knows what in the basement with all of these other men. Because I think at one point our coven was all men, pretty much, or
nominally,
yeah, like I know I've had that like a couple of times where it was all in, like, and then luckily, thank the stars, the counselor just happened to be pagan. Like, how did that even happen?
No
and she was like,
yeah,
right. And she was, because I asked him, okay, we're going into counseling, please just don't mention that, because people misunderstand. And that's the first thing that, of course, he brought up. But we were at that place, so I get it. And she was like, well, that's her spiritual practice. She has every right to be down there. What do you mean doing God knows what? Like, I'm sure she'll tell you what is going on. And I'm like, exactly. Like, but cool. He's always had a hard time with that. Be patient with your partner and educate as much as you can within the boundaries that you're allowed to. And I know it's difficult, but if you're ever in a relationship where you have to sacrifice the core of your being, that thing that lights you ablaze and makes life worth living, stick true to you. And it'll be worth it, though, when you come out the other side. Come out at the end of it. You have to always live your truth. Do you want to be someone that sacrifices who they are to that extent? I mean, we all make agreements and come to the middle. That's a relationship. But I mean, when you have to sacrifice the core of your being, nobody that loves you would ever ask you to do that. And I've had difficulties in my marriage where my husband didn't understand, but that was always the non-negotiable denominator in everything. Like, this is me. When we first started dating and I said, well, you know what? I'm a witch and this and that. And his first response was, why are you telling me? What does that even matter? Well, actually, it has proven to be extremely significant over the past 15 years. And
I'm telling you for a reason.
Yes. And that is non-negotiable. So
I was going to say that I think you bring up a good point too there, in the sense that something that occurs to me as you were speaking is that if you're at a point in your relationship where somebody isn't being supportive, and you feel that strongly about it, in the sense of, oh, maybe this isn't the right person for me, and all of this, maybe that's happening to you for a reason, because it's to encourage you on the path that you're on. You know what I mean? I've had moments where at the time I'm like, oh, this person, and I'm the type of person, when I get in a relationship, I really throw myself all into it. And so I'm very passionate that way. And I feel like I've been in moments where I've had times where, especially in that first one, where it was like, okay, this is not we're not aligning on this. Now at that time for me personally, I was getting into Wicca and I had just become an initiate, and we're not aligning anymore on our, on stuff when it comes to our spiritual beliefs and that. And one of the things that led to the end of that relationship for me was the fact that I realized that meant that that person wasn't for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would never fault anybody for sticking in something and choosing the relationship over whatever, over, trying to make the relationship work, I should say. I would never fault anybody for trying to make the relationship work. I would never fault anybody for, having differences in their relationship and doing what they need to in order to make that work. What I would say, though, is that if you have to change that core, if you have to change that truth in you, even if you're just discovering it and you just have a sliver of it and you feel like there's something, listen to that. Because if you have to change, like you said before, is that love? Is that love? I don't think that's love.
Going on the computer mic. I wonder how long we've been on because my AirPods died. Yeah. I don't care though. I love it.
I don't care either. I'm just like, I'm plugged in. I'm good. Okay. Yeah, I feel like going back to us, is that a compromise? Is that a healthy thing? Should you be compromising on that? Is that love? I don't think that that's love. I feel like love is supportive, and love is, is learning to accept the things that you don't necessarily always approve of or like in somebody else. I think that that's a big part of it as well. And so if your partner looks at you and says, well, this, and they're always judging you and they're always coming at you and not making any effort to learn to accept that this is your truth and learn to accept that this is who you are and the path you're choosing to walk, is that really a partner?
Exactly.
That's not a partner in my book. So that's kind of where I would go with that personally. I think ultimately it comes down to what's your truth, and how can you honor that truth, and if you're losing people through honoring that truth, are those people really in line with your truth? That's enough about that. That's really
good advice.
And until next time, I wish you dark and wild blessings.